Hello, students. Welcome to California History. I'm Professor Collins, and I'm going to be your instructor for this course over the summer of 2020. I am so happy to be here with you. I really enjoy teaching this course. And so basically, this particular PowerPoint, we are just going to go over the syllabus. So I'm going to tell you about the course expectations, and then we are also going to talk about some basic things about history, like what do historians do, and what are primary and secondary sources, and then some basic vocabulary. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. So as I said before, all of this information is actually also on your syllabus, but I'm just going to go ahead and go through it. And I'm going to go through it kind of quickly because I know that you all can read and review your syllabus on your own. But I do want to explain further some of the aspects, particularly of the graded components of the course, just to kind of get you oriented. All right, so this is a 6-week summer course. So we will begin on June 22nd, and we are going to end on July 30th. The format of this course is 100% online, so you will not be expected to Zoom in or to participate at any particular time in the course. That said, of course, it will then require you to be much more diligent and managing your own time so that you make sure that you can review all of the course material and get all of the assignments in on time. As I mentioned, my name's Professor Collins. I'm one of 2 full-time faculty at College of the Desert in history, and I'm very pleased to be teaching this class in the summer. It's my first time teaching this course as a summer class, but I really do enjoy teaching this course. I am a multi-generational Californian, and so my roots on my mother's side go very far back in California history, so I do feel a real affinity as well with this history, so that always makes it especially fun. My email address is ocollins@collegeofthedesert.edu. This is the absolute best way to get in touch with me. I respond to emails very regularly, maybe even within 24 hours. I do ask that you give me 24 hours, but it's usually less than that unless it's a weekend. My office hours are Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday from 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. via Zoom. I will be sending out every week Zoom invites for those office hours. So if you ever want to ask me a question on Zoom or maybe just come and check in, clarify something, anything that you want to do, I'm happy and there for you on those days and times. Now, if you cannot make it on those days and times for whatever reason, you can always let me know, and it is possible for me to schedule a special appointment with you, or you can always email me whatever questions you have, whatever you prefer. Okay, so again, taken directly from the syllabus, this is a course in California history. We are going to begin this course in pre-Columbian American Indian communities. I feel very strongly that a large portion of California history should be focused on not just the pre-Columbian and the pre-European contact era, but also on the pre-American era of California history. So we're going to spend the first half of this class, which for this class is 3 weeks, we're going to spend that first half focusing on Native Americans in California, their experience in terms of California history, and then we are also going to talk about Spanish and Mexican California. So again, the first 3 weeks are going to focus on that. Some of the material, especially for the Native American portion, is going to be kind of picked from various chapters throughout the textbook. I will give you a heads up on that, and I will post on your Canvas module which pages in the textbook correspond with the material. For the first week, we're going to focus primarily on chapter 1 of the textbook, so that makes it pretty easy, and then a little bit of chapter 2 as well. So the list that you see here upon successful completion of this course, this just kind of tells you some basic principles of California history that you should be able to take away from this course when it concludes. The required materials for this course is just one textbook, Pacific El Dorado, A History of Greater California. I think that you will find that this textbook is very easy to read. The chapters aren't too long. They do contain, in some cases, some primary source documents, which is also very valuable for the course, and some images as well, some maps. So do get your textbook, get to know your textbook. Your textbook really will help reinforce a lot of the material for this course. Occasionally, I will lecture on some things that are not contained in the textbook, and that's why it's really important to also review the PowerPoint lectures. Obviously, because this is an online course, access to the internet is required, so you will want to make sure that you have a reliable internet, at least for the next 6 weeks. Supplemental material will be provided by me. So any additional materials besides the textbook, I will provide that to you through documents. I will upload documents and things like that onto Canvas. And there will be supplemental material for this course, particularly for the Native American portion of California history. Okay, so there are 6 graded course components, actually 5 grade categories, but 6 different major components. The first are the weekly quizzes. So you will have 4 quizzes throughout the course of this course, and they will be posted on your weekly module, and they will be due on the Sunday of whatever week. So for example, our first week, we will have a quiz that will be due on Sunday, the 28th of June. And by due, that means it needs to be submitted on Canvas by 11:59 p.m. on Sunday, June 28th. These are timed quizzes and they are only one attempt. So before you log into the quiz, you want to make sure that you have reviewed the course material of that week, that you feel very confident with that material, and you will have 1 hour to complete the quiz, and again, only one attempt. So those are weekly, and look for those at the end of each week's course module. In week 3, there will be a midterm exam. Now, the midterm exam and the final exam for this course are rather large, long tests. You will get 2 hours to do the tests, both of them. And they will be based on all of the material that we had covered in the course up to that point. So, for example, for the midterm exam, you will be expected to know the course material from weeks 1, 2, and 3. For the final exam, you will be expected to know the course material from weeks 4, 5, and 6. So even though it's called a final exam, it is a non-cumulative final exam. Both the midterm and the final exam will be very similarly formatted. There will be roughly 50 to 70 multiple choice, true, false, fill in the blank questions. And then there will be written responses that you will be required to do as well. And so the weekly quizzes are meant to kind of give you a preview of what you can expect on your exam. I do recycle the questions from the quizzes on the exam. So again, it's all about repetition. It's about alleviating your anxiety. I want you to have fun with this course and enjoy it. So I really want it to not cause you a lot of anxiety. So think of the quizzes as a preview of the exams, so that by the time you get to the exam, you will feel pretty comfortable and familiar with the material and also with the format. So there will, like I said, be about 50 to 60 or 70 multiple choice questions, and then you will have written responses as well. There will also be a research paper that will be due the last day of class, which is July 30th, Thursday, July 30th. And the instructions for that research paper are already posted on Canvas. Now, for California history, sometimes it can be a little bit tricky finding research sources and materials. So I have provided for you research links on Canvas that you can link directly to online archives. These are all reliable sources, reliable and credible sources. So you can use those. Feel free to use those. If you're having a really difficult time finding sources on a particular topic that you are writing on, please do not hesitate to send me an email, and I am happy to help you. I can even send you links to sources. You can also use, of course, your textbook as a source, and also any kind of material that I provide for the class as one of your sources as well. So detailed instructions for the final paper are posted on Canvas. So please check that out. Let me know if you have any questions. And again, you can always email me the questions, or you can Zoom into office hours. A map quiz. So geography is a really important component for understanding history and really sort of just having a respect for land and space. And it really does help you kind of understand the people and the experiences of the people in a place when you understand the geography of a place. So we are actually going to begin the course in Chapter 1 talking about California's geographical features and some of the unique aspects of California's geography. But we will have a map quiz related to different types of geographical markers in California in week 4. I have posted for you already a very simple study guide for that quiz. It is a very basic map of the state, and you're going to need to look at that map and just kind of get a sense of the boundaries of California, some of the important geographic features of California. The map quiz is only worth 5% of your grade, and it is a 10 question plus 1 additional question of extra credit. Just written response. So I will ask you a question about California geography, and then you will type your response. So that's what you can expect for that. If you have any more questions, then you can always, of course, email or Zoom. And then finally, the assignments. These are assignments that I will post on your Canvas module each week. There will be at least one discussion, which will be posted every week. The discussion actually is due on Thursday. Your discussion response is due on Thursday, but your final response to your peer is not due until Sunday. But I will be looking for you to post that discussion response by Thursday in order to get your credit. And this discussion will be based on some materials that I give to you to review and then respond to. For the first week, you will actually be doing 2 discussion links. You will be doing your introduction, which you must get in by Wednesday, the 24th. This is basically like my roll call. So if you are enrolled in the class, please post your introduction by Wednesday. That tells me that you have logged in and that you are present and that you are indeed, participating in the course. Okay, so that is required. And then the second discussion is going to be posted as well, and that will be due on Thursday. So those are discussions. Those will be every week. Not every week there will be a video response, but there will be some on a weekly basis, and then the document response. So I will be posting documents and expecting you to respond to them. Sometimes they'll be primary source documents, sometimes they will be articles, but again, you will be required to do these responses. These are all supplemental materials, but they are also related to the lecture material in the course content that we will be covering in that week. Okay, so very quickly, just going through the grade weights. The written assignments are worth 15% of your grade, so you want to make sure that you get those done. As I mentioned, the map quiz is worth 5% of your grade. Those in-class quizzes, 4 of them altogether, are altogether worth 15% of your grade. So not a huge grade weight there, because again, I'm kind of looking at the quizzes as being practice for the exams. The exams, on the other hand, quite a hefty chunk of your grade. If you will notice, 50% of your grade will be based on the two exams, the midterm and the final. That is 25% of your grade each. So you really do want to be prepared for those exams. To alleviate some anxiety, I do provide study guides for the exams a week before the exam is posted. So you will be able to have that study guide to guide you. Of course, it's an online course, so it's open book and open note. So you can have whatever materials that you require in order to be successful nearby. But I really recommend using that study guide as kind of the basis for guiding your study efforts for those two exams. And then finally, the final paper, which again, the instructions for it are posted up on Canvas already. They're ready to go, so please review those. Let me know if you have any questions, but it is 15% of your final grade. So you also want to make sure that you get that paper in. Okay, so this is a pretty important point here, and that's that I do not drop students from my course unless they do not show. So if you are participating, if you have posted your introduction by the 24th, then I will assume that you are in the course and that you would like to remain in the course. If you stop participating in the course, for whatever reason, it is your responsibility to drop the course. In order to do that, you have to go to WebAdvisor in your student portal. Now, if you don't know how to drop the course or you're unsure about it, please do not be shy about talking to me, and I can help guide you through it. I can even do it for you if it's before the drop deadline, but you want to make sure that you are minding those deadlines, knowing when the drop deadline is, and reviewing the important dates. So again, I do not drop students from the course unless they are what we call a no-show, meaning that they didn't show up on the first day or they didn't participate within the first couple days in the case of an online class. Please let me know if you have any questions about this. Okay, so I've already really gone through all of these, so I'm not going to go ahead and do it again, but I will draw your attention to the final paper. So the final paper is going to be due in week 6, obviously our last week of the course. A digital copy of your paper will be uploaded to the Canvas VeriSite link, and VeriSite is a plagiarism checker site, so your paper will be cross-referenced with the internet and also with other student papers. So you want to make sure that you are citing your sources and that you are not plagiarizing, copying, pasting, etc. It will definitely show up on that VeriSite check. You need to turn in your paper on time in order to get full credit, but I will leave the link open for several additional days. However, for each day that your paper is late, 15 points will be deducted from your final grade. And then 4 days after the due date, the VeriSite link and the upload link will close. So really, you just want to make sure that you're getting it in on time. Okay, generally I have a no makeup policy. Most students do their best to get their materials in on time, and so it's not fair for me to give exceptions for makeups for anybody who asks. That being said, if there is an emergency for some reason you cannot do a quiz or an assignment or something like that, then you can let me know, but I have the right to ask you for a verifiable excuse. And verifiable excuse is one that has been documented. So doctor's note, picture of a car wreck, those types of things, those are verifiable excuses. So you do need to let me know prior to whatever the due date of the assignment is. So if, and most of the assignments, especially the important ones like quizzes and exams, those are all due on Sunday. So you would have to let me know prior to Sunday your reason why you are unable to do the assignment on time. So, but in general, I do not allow makeups, and I do have the right to say no to any request for a makeup. Okay, academic integrity. This is mostly applies in this course to your paper. So you want to make sure that you are um, citing your paper correctly, that you're not plagiarizing, etc. Classroom conduct. So obviously we are in a digital environment, so you want to monitor your online posts and any Zoom interactions that you might have with me or other students. Of course, no negative or discriminatory behavior or language will be tolerated in this class. Please be thoughtful when you are giving your written responses in the discussion form. And please review the netiquette statement, which is posted in the introductory module on Canvas for further instruction and guidance on this issue. Okay, if you are registered with the DSPS office at College of the Desert and you need to have accommodations in this course, please let me know as soon as possible. Email me your accommodation sheet so that I can assure that I provide you with those accommodations in a timely manner. You will also find links to our DSPS office in the Student Resources module on our Canvas page. Tutoring. We have a great tutoring center at College of the Desert, so please take advantage of it, particularly in the cases of your papers. You can submit your paper, work with a writing tutor to really fine-tune your paper before you turn it in. They have online tutoring is available, and I did put a link into a tour, a virtual tour of the tutoring center for the summer session. So please check that out and utilize that service. Okay, so this is a really important part of this overall, orientation of the course. Obviously, as your instructor, I want you to succeed in this class, but that is something that I cannot make happen. You must be willing to take that time and effort in order to succeed. So here are some tips and guideposts that you can follow throughout this class for success. The first is read the assigned textbook material. I will make a to-do list every week. This is what you should do. And it will literally be a list, do this, do this, do this, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And follow that list and do read that material. As I said, the textbook is really easy to read. It's a very readable textbook. It's only got one author, so it doesn't the voice doesn't change and jump all over the place. It's a very smooth read. So please read that assigned text material. Also, my lectures cannot possibly cover everything. And so the textbook material really adds context and depth to the course overall. Okay. Second, I narrate my PowerPoints and put it up on YouTube. Obviously, you're listening to this one right now. All of the PowerPoint lectures will be available and links to them will be available in your modules. My recommendation is that while you are listening to the lecture, take notes. Take notes just like as if you were in class. If you have a question that comes up for you, obviously because it's not real time, you won't be able to ask that question, but write it in the margins of your notes or make a little star next to it in your notes, and then email me that question or Zoom into office hours and ask me that question. But taking notes is going to be really critical for success in this class because a lot of the material that I will be quizzing you on will be based on the material from the lectures. So number 3 is very similar. If you have any questions about course content or expectations, contact me via email or Zoom office hours, and please do not be shy about this. Number 4, don't get behind, especially in an accelerated class. We've got 6 weeks to cover 16 or 15 weeks of normal semester material. So it's going to be really important that you stay on top of it, that you're doing the assigned readings, that you're listening to the lectures, etc. So that's going to be really important. And then finally, make it fun. History is one of those subjects where you can constantly learn something new. It's one of the things that I love the most about it. So if you have a question about something, look it up, Google it, or email me a question. Sometimes I get questions from students that I don't know the answer to, and it gives me an opportunity to learn something new. This is why I love my job. So please don't hesitate to do that. Let's have a good time together. Let's make it fun. Let's not make it boring. Let's not suffer through this. All right. Let's make it a good time. So please have fun with this class, and explore the things that you are interested in as it relates to California history. Okay, so important dates. This is really important for all students to be aware of. No matter what semester you're going to school and college, you want to make sure what the last day to add is. And in this class, that date comes up very quickly. It's the second day of the course. June 23rd is the last day to input any add codes that you get for this course. June 23rd is also the last day to drop the course and qualify for a refund. So you want to make sure that you are, if you need to drop the course immediately, that you are doing that in order to get that refund. June 28th is the last day to drop without a W showing up on your transcript, and July 20th is the last day to drop with a W. Our final exam will be due July 30th, which is a Thursday. Okay, so this is the part of the introduction where I just give you an overview of what do historians do and how do they do it. So one of the biggest things about being a historian is that you are essentially a researcher, right? You are looking for evidence of the past, and then you are taking that evidence and you are looking to interpret it, right, into meaningful trends, to present it to people in a narrative that is easy to understand, and that is as accurate as possible. And then finally, presenting that interpretation to the general public through lots of different ways to do this, right? Through writing literature, articles, books, through education, like what I do, being a professor, museums and memorials, so curating museum exhibits, consulting on public memorial spaces, working on historic preservation and preserving historic sites. So there are lots of different things that historians can do with the skills that they learn through being researchers and through putting together a historic narrative. Our history is who we are, not just as an individual, but also as a community and a society. And so being able to make really strong, informed, educated choices and decisions about your life really requires that you understand and have a very good sense of the history of your communities and your society. Okay, so historians are able to piece together the past by examining and analyzing secondary and primary sources. So I'm going to go ahead and define what secondary and primary sources are. Okay, so we're going to begin by talking about the definition of secondary sources. And so I like to use a concrete example when I do this. So what is the definition of a secondary source? A secondary source is a source that was written or produced after the period of study. So let me give you an example for California history. Let's say you wanted to learn about the gold rush, but you knew very, very little about the gold rush. Okay, how are you going to find out just general information about the gold rush? Well, in these days and age, basically what we do is we Google it, right? So you Google Gold Rush, California Gold Rush, and you would get a bunch of things that would pop up. Probably some of the first sites that would pop up might be Wikipedia site or a Britannica site or something like that. And you click into it and you read this very sort of nicely written, concise narrative, historic summary of what the gold rush is, right? And so this is secondary sources are sources that are written by people after the time that the event has actually taken place, by people that have studied the event and then put together all of the information for people to sort of have a nice, like I said, concise summary narrative of that event. So some examples of secondary sources are your textbook, right? So your textbook was written by the author, and he was not somebody, Thomas Osborne did not live through the gold rush, right? But he writes about the gold rush in the textbook, and he does so because he has researched it and he has investigated all of various sources around the gold rush, and so he's able to create this nice chapter on the gold rush in your textbook so that you can learn about it in history class, right? Another example of a secondary source are encyclopedias or nonfiction history books. Secondary sources are great places to start research in order to get an overview and a summary of an event. However, this is where they fail. Secondary sources are always biased material, right? Secondary sources, when a person writes a secondary source, they are giving you a story about something that has happened in the past from their perspective, right? So you're not really getting the perspective of an actual miner during the gold rush, or you're not getting the perspective of an actual female store owner during the gold rush, right? You're not getting those firsthand perspectives in secondary sources. And that's where the primary sources come in. And that's where you start to really get the richness of history. But secondary sources are very important. They're excellent places to start research. They are also excellent places to find sources to continue research, right? So if you get a good secondary source, they will always list their sources at the end, and then you can follow those sources to more information and material about your topic. So here are just some visuals of some examples of secondary sources. As I mentioned, the textbook, right? A classic example of a secondary source. Encyclopedias, also secondary sources. A lot of the history books that you find in the section at Barnes and Noble are secondary sources. These nonfiction history books about whatever event that have been written by an author, right? And then a lot of these compilations like the complete history of the world, and National Geographic's, whatever history of the Yosemite Valley or something like that. Those, again, all secondary sources, right? This information is being compiled for you by somebody who has researched it and is now being presented to you. And again, great sources, but just they have limits because of their bias. Okay, so the second way in which historians are able to construct history is through primary sources. And primary sources are sources that are produced during the period of study. So let's go back to our gold rush example. You've learned about the gold rush from secondary sources. You get a good sense of sort of the timeline and the chronology and sort of the basic facts of the gold rush, and you want to know more. You want to know what women's experience was like during the gold rush. So you want to find some primary sources that would reflect the experiences of women specifically during the gold rush. So you could get on the Google, you can Google primary source documents, women in California history, gold rush or something like that, and you could get some hits because a lot of these primary sources are now digitized and put online in online archives. And then you could read from the perspective of a woman living through the gold rush, what it was like. And she's not going to tell you how to think about it, right? She's going to simply be conveying her experience. And in that way, you are then able to you are able to construct your own ideas around what those experiences would be like and how women's experiences fit into the greater historic narrative of the California Gold Rush. So some examples of primary sources, letters, memoirs, diaries, treatises, any kind of written material produced during the period of study. Newspapers and magazines and posters, those are great sources of primary source material when you're looking at just sort of greater ideas of what society was saying and thinking about what was happening in their time period. Literature is a great source of primary source material. Novels that were produced during the period of study can really give you a lot of insight into what people were thinking about and what types of things were important to people at the time. Of course, art and music, film and photographs. Film and photographs, of course, are limited in terms of their historic use because they had to be invented before we could start using them. So those sources just go back to the 19th century. But art and music can go back even further. Music, of course, would be sheet music before the time of recorded music. And then artifacts and architecture also are important sources for historians when looking at the past. So if we look here, some examples of primary sources from California history, you're looking at the Los Angeles Herald, the cover page of the San Francisco earthquake, the reporting on the San Francisco earthquake. You're looking also at an early map from Spanish explorers of California. That was back when they thought it was an island. And then the transcontinental brand, Sunkissed. This, again, so much of California's history is encapsulated in just this one image right here with the railroads and the citrus and how important those things become, particularly during the American period. And then overland mail route to California. So one of the interesting things about California is that California was very much isolated from the rest of the country. And in many ways, the world, because of its geography, until the building of the Transcontinental Railroad. So overland stagecoaches and wagon routes and things like that were very important in the early period of California history, and certainly shipping as well, the coastal routes. So, so anyway, these are some examples of primary sources from California history. Okay, so here's just some basic vocabulary that I want to cover very quickly. The first point I'd like to make is get to know your text. Check out your textbook, look in the back, look at the appendix, look at the index, look at the table of contents, and that will help really kind of get you acquainted with the material overall, maybe look at some maps, etc. The second thing I want to talk about are dates in the dating system. The way that we talk about dates in history can sometimes be confusing, right? So the 20th century is the 1900s, the 19th century is the 1800s, the 18th century is the 1700s, the 17th century is the 1600s, right? And so on and so forth. So that can sometimes be confusing for students. For example, if I'm talking about, the gold rush in 1843, and then I say the 19th century in the next sentence, I'm talking about the same things, but because they're two different numbers, it tends to be confusing for students. So that's just a quick reminder. Get used to that sort of back and forth and that switching around in terms of that vocabulary. And then the next thing that you see here are just lists of abbreviations. It's not that important for this class because we're not really talking about ancient history in this class, but I did list them out for you just to reference. For the most part, what is being used nowadays in history texts are CE, which is stands for Common Era, which was formerly known as AD, and BCE, before Common Era, formerly known as BC. So those are the two date abbreviations that you will often find in history texts today. So if you have any questions about the syllabus or any of the introductory information, please do not hesitate to, again, either send me an email or you can always Zoom into office hours. And it would be great to see you Zoom into office hours at least once over the semester. I'm not requiring it, but it would be nice because then we get to sort of talk, face to face, so to speak. And I would love to get to know each of you. So for now, make sure that you get that introductory post done and submitted by Wednesday, the 24th. All right, and I will see you later. Bye.